Welcome everyone to the first finance and performance meeting of this triennium. Welcome to anyone watching online. And we've already read the council prayer this morning, so I'll call for apologies. I've received apologies from His Worship the Mayor Watson and Councillor Sharland. And I'm happy to move that they be accepted. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Wong. All those in favour? Against, carried. Item number 3 is public forum. I've not been notified of any public forum. Item number 4 is conflict of interest declarations. As per the normal process, has anyone got anything they'd like to declare at this stage? If not, please bring it up during the meeting. No changes to confirmation of order of business and no follow-up items on our agenda here today. But we need to accept that.
We just received the report.
Just received. So we'll just receive that the report of no follow-up actions is received today. I'm happy to move that. Seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Moving to item 7, my verbal chair's report. For me, it feels like it's been a very turbulent few months. So I'd like to thank the first responders, fire and emergency, the farmers, and of course the power contractors and all those that came to everyone's rescue in the storm mid-February. Now, 6 weeks later, there's still a lot of frustrating cleanup awaiting attention. In addition to the huge effort by our forestry members in clearing up approximately 1,000 hectares of damage throughout our district. At council this morning, we heard an estimated estimated costs of around $3 million is going to be required for further roading repairs. Additionally, it's certainly been turbulent globally as we try and consider the impacts on our region. It seems there's a lot of F words in our midst. Fuel, freight, fertiliser and finance costs are all likely to impact forthcoming budgets, and the uncertainty of timeframes involved for council. So we have been, the CE and her staff have been developing their own response plan. So challenges abound, but I look forward to going through today's finance and performance meeting. I'm happy to move that report be received. Any questions? Any questions? Any further discussion? Seconder, Councillor Wong, thank you. All those in favour? Against? Into catch up because I do have some annotations here. Item number 8, page 7, reports for information. And we'll pass to Leanne, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. I'll take the paper as read and I'll just highlight a few points that I think of interest. On page 7, our first 2 graphs on our operating revenue and operating expenditure are looking relatively aligned, which is a nice way to be. Our total capital expenditure is clearly not aligned, and I'll discuss that in more detail further through the report when we get to the table of all capital program projects, and many of them you'll see are to a degree outside of the control of council. What I'd like to just touch quickly on page 9 is total external debt. While it still remains identical to what it's been since 30 June, I think it might be earlier. I was asked at the last meeting, our 2 tranches that rolled over in February, what the new rates were. And the bottom 2 of the table, both 5 million, and one's at 2.7 and one's at 2.69. You'll see we've rolled them over for 3 months. At the moment, we are watching the interest rate market with interest. And even the next lot that we're about to roll very shortly, we will continue to have it at a short period of time because the banks at the moment are adjusting for the turmoil out there, particularly the impact of Donald Trump. And so we will keep moving this until we get that stability. If you have a look, moving on from that, you'll see our main, the mix of internal and external debt at 54 million for the external and 22.8 for our internal. And I think I've touched on it a few times. We use our internal debt as our way of funding ourselves, being the banker for ourselves, so to speak, rather than going out and getting external debt when we don't actually need it. The next part I'd just like to touch on is page 14, and that reflects the whole of council, and it shows you where we are tracking. As I've already reflected in the graphs, we're pretty much in line on our revenue. There are some unders and overs, which is not unusual because we often reflect our revenue as 1/12, and we can't guarantee the timing of that, particularly around subsidies and grants and other revenue, because it depends on our spend to what we reflect, how we reflect our revenue. Our total expenses, you'll see we're quite favourable at the moment. And again, that reflects in part timing, but also some costs will be down permanently for the year, which is always a good thing.
One quick question, Chair, if I may, and this might sound like a really random one, but I've heard you use the term about internal debt, and I understand how that works. Do you internally charge interest rate to yourself as a true cost of using that from a business point of view? You do, don't you?
We do. And we use the weighted average cost of interest,
Yes.
and that you don't see that within the business because it offsets with the true external interest income and external interest cost.
But it's shown as a true cost of
Correct.
operation.
Yep. So we're literally paying the activities for their cash,
Yep.
and we're charging the activities for their debt.
Excellent, thank you.
If there's no questions, I'm not going to go through page by page. I'm sort of looking if anyone's got any questions on any of the activities.
I'll just put out to Councillor Wilson that if you look in the categories, under the finance cost of each category includes that interest
Yeah, but
charge.
is that the total amount including the internal, or is that just the external?
That would include
It will be a mix.
It'd be mixed.
Thank you.
You've covered this.
Sorry?
I was just going to ask page 20 around rubbish and recycling. With the fees and charges, the waste transfer revenue's been a lot lower than planned. Do you have any understanding why that is? And yeah,
No, but the right person just walked in the door.
Right.
But I did note the costs were down as well, but I can't understand why. So, Mr. Bernardi, the question is on our rubbish and recycling. We note that our revenue for our waste transfer station is down.
Yeah.
Do we know why that is?
Yep, absolutely. We've installed weigh bridges on Bulls, Tie Happy, and we fixed the one on Martin. That means everything that goes into our transfer stations now are weighed and charged per weight. We suspect in the past there was quite a lot of solid waste from other areas outside of the district that came to these transfer stations because it was cheap. So on the income line, there is a reduction, but also on the expenditure, there's a reduction on landfill cost. Reduction in landfill cost is more attractive than the reduction in income. So we're in a good position.
Oh, thank you. Okay. The final page that, unless there's further questions that I was going to take, committee to is page 23. And in that you will see that we have carried out a full year forecast, which is the column to the right, the final column to the right. And you'll see that we're reflecting a decrease from 43 million to 32.3 million of spend. And that's a reflection of work we're already signalling will be in our annual plan next year, 26-27, and reflecting delays that will impact, and again, we'll move into next year's phase of work, program of work. Again, happy to take questions on that.
Just on that one, Chair, if I may. This is, all this reporting is, and it's the only way it can be, it's retrospective. So we're actually 2 months behind on this one up.
This is as at 28th of February,
So it's reasonably up to date. So,
semi retrospective for the forecast. The forecast is future looking.
yeah, because of the weather event impact, as we heard today in finance performance, yet to understand what the total fire rate will be. We're hopeful for a lot, but that's going to have an impact. And we have got this, from our earlier workshop today, this emerging risk of what the cost of operations are going to be with fuel and the potentially reduction in service to offset our ability to stay within our budgets. Where does that factor in your future thinking? And it's a really tough one, because we have to consider what does the impact of that look like and still to maintain.
So through the chair, so for the first part, it won't impact on the capital project per se, because all of the roading, for instance, is OPEX, because it's repairing what was damaged. So it's not capital. Regarding that piece of work, when we get that final figure, and if I recall, we've already brought one paper to council on when we thought it was 2 million and how we were funding that. So we've already raised that and brought that and got a plan in place to fund that, which is using reserves. It can't impact the program of work because it can impact the program of work, but it can't impact the budget because I can't go out and get more money. I can't go and re-rate our ratepayers during a year. So that is being funded by the reserves that already existed under the roading targeted reserve bucket. That cleaned out the bucket. And if we end up, and we don't know what the next bit's going to be, we'll bring another paper to council. And again, we will have another conversation about how we fund that piece. I've got my own thinking, but we will wait and see what the figures are.
I think the message is that we're looking at this right across the organisation rather than per one activity, because Parks and Reserves, for example, will have to pivot what they do as well. So the short answer is that we'll bring something back to council to let them know, especially if there's going to be a change in level of service of things that we're actually.
The change of level of service is one option, but it's looking through all this and then thinking about my comment about retrospective and other things and going forward. There is a potential, and this is just a comment, not that it's an action, but there is a potential of some increased head funding.
Yes,
Potentially, and we're in a finance meeting,
Potentially,
so
correct.
potentially
Yep,
that
correct.
could be something, and that would be reflective of what we continue to try and do to keep up with our works programs and other such things. So there is a potential for that.
And that won't reflect in this set of accounts until we have a resolution from council, because we only change our budget based on carry forwards and council resolutions. The revised forecast over here isn't flowing through the actual budget, if that makes sense. That's just giving you, the committee and ultimately the council, a signal, because last year, right at the end of the year, we made, as part of the annual report, you saw that we had to make an adjustment for the rail hub. And the question was, why hadn't I signalled that earlier in the year, which was a fair call. So we're trying to reflect that, but it doesn't change our actual budget, if that makes sense. It needs a council resolution for me to change the budget. The revised
You've got a
budget.
few balls in the air and we're likely to throw you another couple.
Yeah, guaranteed,
Happy joking.
guaranteed. Other than that, is there any other questions?
So just making sure that I've got this right. So we've revised our budget down.
The capital program of work down to
sorry.
32.3 mil, yes.
And so we're 75% way through the year, and we've only spent 24% of that budget.
Of the, no, 24% of the 43 million, not of the revised. The revised budget, sorry, the
Okay.
budget to the right is a forecast that has not been flowed through our system because it is not a council resolution. It is Warren and his team meeting with our budget managers and getting a forecast so that we can signal to you what is happening. But the,
So in page 8, it does say 24% of the revised full year budget.
the revised full year budget is the 43 million, which is the carry forward. And so we've not the forecast. So there's a revised budget, which is the column before,
Yeah.
and that's what we report against. So the revised budget is because council authorised carry forward
Yeah,
of our end of year, and there was a couple of other changes. So we went from the annual plan, which is the column right to the left. So we're running three
yeah.
columns. So 39.5 million was the original capital project that we adopted when we adopted the annual plan. Then council approved changes to the program and carry forward, which brought it to 43.2. That is the budget we track our spend against, because that is the formal budget that is in our system that's been adopted by council subsequent to the annual plan. The forecast, which is the full year forecast, that is an informal budget, for lack of a better word. That is me meeting with my team meeting with the budget managers and going, what are you actually going to spend this year? And that's what we're trying to reflect, that just to keep council abreast of that, and committee abreast of that. So you'll
So
see
you're still-
changes.
So you're sitting at about a third of it. So are you realistically saying you're gonna get the other 20 mil spent in quarter of the, a quarter of the year?
I would,
And that's why and what can we do to just, as an elected member, we just don't seem to be making any progress, and I'm finding it really frustrating. And I just don't know what we can do to make this a better situation, because, yeah.
If I can make some comment here. You'll see that we have the big projects in here, the Toby Town Hall, and they are not in the time frame that we want, but they're still progressing. And a lot of these things are held up because of reasons that are not in our control or your control, but we're still driving them along, and they have to sit in a staged budget. So they show as a negative impact, I suppose, that we would rather not have. You've heard this morning in the Essex meeting around where we're at with some of the other water projects, in particular the ones that were waiting for the new wastewater standards. Now that's been released, they can now start. So a lot of these are actually things that are in train, but probably not as far along as we would have hoped they would be when we programmed them in the long-term plan. But they still have to have a staged budget beside them. The roading one will always be spent. So there's no question of that one.
Yeah,
And it's timing with the roading program, but it's some of those other ones. And I think that key is that we try and provide you with the explanation where there are ones that are behind and the reasons behind it.
But I definitely, from my perspective, as we go into the long-term plan, if we can't do the list that's been in front of us for years now, multiple years, we can't even put the numbers in our reports because these previous long-term plans. We need to get this list down to a doable level and get it done. So, yeah, that is my concern in commentary. Yes.
I hear what you're saying about because we see this activity within the financial reporting, but the financial reporting is more about the money and less about the time. And it's the time which has become the struggle with a lot of these projects, trying to get things done on time. That was,
My inference would be we're
Yeah.
trying to do too much then.
or our time budgeting is not working quite as well as our wonderful financial.
And I
budgeting.
think that's a fair call. And certainly when we do our next long-term plan, that is better rigor will be put on timeframes. But where things are out of our control, like consenting, for example, for some of our water, you've got to have a budget in your long-term plan, and you would hope that a consent might take 1 to 2 years, but it can take 5 years, but you've still got to have the budget in there to do the work when you get the consent. So it's a balancing act the whole time. So, and I think the message to us from elected members, and I hear you, Chair, is to make sure that you understand that when we're actually developing the next long-term plan, and we bring you through these issues that we have ourselves.
Councillor.
Slightly different comment. So we've got budgeted, which is not shown here, and then we've got revised budget, and then you've labelled the column forecast. In a lot of government reports, they would use budgeted, and then they would use projected, and then forecast is kind of like an economic forecast, it's blah.
So through the chair, I use projected often when we're proposing a budget. You can use the word projected. Projection is just a forecast. We do use the full annual plan, it is there. And the full revised budget is there. This is a forecast of what our managers are forecasting they're going to spend this year. So for me, I feel it's a correct word. I'm not prepared to die in the ditch over it, but to me, it's potatoes.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair, and certainly hearing your earlier comments, but part of that also is such a long-term project over a number of years. How do we make sure we protect our budget line, and how are we reflecting increases in costs over those period of times? Comes into that comment as well, but I hear your frustration. My question is just very, very quickly, and we often see this terminology used, subsidy and grants are under budget, which is principally a timing issue. Does that tell me that they are actually confirmed and that they will right themselves? Or what does that actually tell me?
Through the chair, typically it's NZTA.
Yes.
And it's our timeline of our spend, because we do the work and then we submit the claim and we get paid. And the revenue is a mix of operating roading and capital program roading, and it depends on how that program of work comes along to how we get the revenue.
Yeah, I understand that, but this one, but so particular is activity and community.
Can you tell me the page, please?
Yeah, it's on page 16, subsidies and grants, variance over 100K. It would be 16 on my
I'm
reporting.
just going to.
That's under the
That's
community
correct, yeah.
section.
So we are missing 165 in
Yeah,
revenue.
it just says principally
Oh,
a
it's
timing
better off
issue.
funding. So that's better off funding. So again, as we spend it, we then submit the claim. And I'm pretty certain that Michael was looking for a couple of things the other day, so we must be getting ready to submit another claim.
Okay.
So that's that better off funding. So it sits just essentially in our balance sheet. We recognise it as these different pieces of work.
So there's
come
no
together.
risk of not getting it.
No,
Okay.
no, it truly is a timing issue.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Thank you. So I'm happy to move that this report, finance snapshot, February 2026 be received. Seconder, please. Thank you, councillor Beard. Item, so all those in favour? Carried. Item 8.2 is the fee waiver. 1st July 2025 to the 31st of December 2025. Thank you, Lena, if you can take us through that.
Certainly, again, I'll take that, take the paper as read. I think in itself, it's pretty self-explanatory. You can see the costs there, or the fees that we've waived. I have done a summary of the top few, the top 4 being the Bulls and District Community Trust Arts for Art's Sake, the Hunterville Hunterway Festival, the All Points Camping Club New Zealand and the RDC Youth HQ. What our report doesn't reflect, it reflects the fee waivers. It doesn't reflect anything that we may have benefited across our district by having these events. And I can't capture that, I'm sorry. Happy to take any questions.
I want to make a further comment on this one. So while these amounts seem, some of them are quite low, you can see they actually add up to quite a few thousand. And we are getting more and more of these as people are feeling the pinch out there with finances. But as staff, we have to balance that as well. And so as part of the long-term plan, we will be coming to you and saying, can you give us some guidance about some of these that you actually want waived, because it does impact on our revenue coming through, same as some of the building consent waivers and those sort of things. So it's just a comment to say that we will be having a discussion with you as part of the long-term plan about your desirability to continue with the waivers as they currently are.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you for the update and thank you for those comments, Carol. Looking at them, not so much the dollar value, but looking at the applicants, they are spread right across the district is the first thing that comes to mind. And they all have significant community focus to all of the groups and different parts of the district that they represent. So I think that's a key focus to have. Not so much on the dollar amount, also the benefit, but the dollar amount is effectively it's ratepayer money, if we're going to be really brutal and honest about it. But just look at the value that these community groups contribute to our district. I think that shouldn't be lost. So
Absolutely.
thank you for the update.
And it might be that you say to me that we cap an amount each year. That's the sort of discussion I want. I think you're exactly right. It's across the district, and also it's usually not-for-profit organisations where these fee requests or waiver requests are received from. So they don't have any other funding mechanisms, a lot of them. Some of them do, so they don't get quite as high a subsidy, if you want to put it that way. But it might be worth, even for my benefit, saying there's a cap of X and whatever X is.
And possibly some consideration of if they didn't get this relief, what would be the outcome?
That's right.
Can I have a mover and a seconder to receive that report, please? Thank you, councillor Wilson. Seconded councillor Wong. All those in favour? Carried. Item 8.3.
Thank you. So through the chair, this is a report that we present typically quarterly. Manawatu Wanganui LAS, so local authority shared service. So one of the shared services we have is a debt collection agency, Debt Management Central, that initially started out to collect the debt for the regional councils, member councils, so the 6 district councils plus Palmerston City. They now collect for 40 councils, so it shows where it can really grow and benefit the collective local government New Zealand. They've collected 600K for us year to date, and you can see we've got the 342 files sitting with them, and 163 have been paid in full. Their charges are really reasonable, and I know when this first started a lifetime ago, we were paying, I want to call it Bay Corp, something like between 19 and 21% collection fees, and it dropped to 10% really quickly by moving to this collection agency. So if you think about that across New Zealand, how much money that saved our ratepayers, it's quite mind-blowing. I just saw a new, the latest report landed on my desk this morning, and they have hit new targets on their debt collection. And it's just an incredibly successful shared service that I'm really pleased we're all part of. Happy to take any questions.
Exciting to hear that. Councillor Wong.
Does NWLS operate at a profit?
Not intentionally, it is a shared service that is not meant to make a profit, But we are, because we're collecting quite a lot of because they are collecting so much revenue at the moment for more councils than they'd anticipated. They have actually made a surplus this year, but they do reinvest it. And I'm going to hand that to our CE who sits on this meeting monthly.
Through you, Chair. So we do, all the CEs are directors of the LAS. So the mayor's actually asked me to do an update at a future council workshop about the function and form of LAS and where we're hoping to go with it. But we have decided to reinvest some of the debt management central into other opportunities through the LAS to make it work. So, yeah.
And Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, so just from observation point of view, for all councils. So, I mean, wouldn't it be great? Would we operate in an environment where we didn't need them? That'd be the first thing. That'd be a fantastic outcome if we could get to that. But unfortunately, we operate in a business world and a business model that doesn't allow us to do that. But without having a proper procedure and follow-up to assess and try and retrieve debt, you could well be hamstrung and taking further steps should you need to through your regulatory rating process. So it is a necessary means to say that you have followed all fair and reasonable steps to collect debt, that you can show that you've followed that pathway should you need to go further as part of that process. So the two are actually reasonably intertwined to make sure that you've got a process. So a necessary thing or a necessary evil, I think would be the term that I would use. It is part of prudent, smart operations.
And through the chair, if I may, when we get to that point that we have to take a much harder path, the LAS drives all of that for us, including going to court for us. And because of the way that they do this process and they have it so well documented and they follow the legislation so perfectly because they're dedicated to this, whereas the rest of us don't have that ability. We don't have the time. It's just about an add-on over here. We have never yet got to court and they've said, no, you haven't followed the process.
That's exactly what.
Leon, I was just interested in understanding a bit more about the rates rebate scheme. So that $805 a year, is that set by central government?
Correct. And so they raise that every year. They change that and we usually get advised around June in time for the new financial year.
Right.
And they fund that. So we the council complete the process and I think it's MB, I think it's MB fund us. It could be DIA, but the government funds us.
And it's set at that dollar amount, not a percentage of your rates or anything like that.
It's got nothing to do with, well, it does have a lot to do with your rates, in that we have to do the form they complete includes our rates, the district council rates, plus the regional council rates. And that forms the amount that they need to qualify. And I'm looking at Tanya because Tanya did a bit of this for a while, didn't you? That forms the amount that they can apply for. It is income tested in that you typically have a gold card. Is that what we call them now? Superannuation card. So it is income tested to a point. And it is based on how much the cost of your rates are. So if you had a tiny amount of rates, you probably wouldn't qualify.
So would you get a proportion of the 805?
Correct. There's a table in the application.
Right.
Sorry, yes, there's a table on how that feeds in, both on income and
Awesome.
costs.
Thank you. Any further discussion, questions? Can I please have a mover and a seconder that the report debt collection update be received? Councillor Wilson, Councillor Baird, seconding. All those in favour? Carried. The next item is item 8.4, LGFA general information.
I will take the paper as read. It really is information. It is from our local government funding agency, which is the agency that funds all of our debt. And it has now got extended powers to be able to fund the debt for our CCOs. So for our new water entity, they will be our provider of funds, and they're already doing that for a number of other new water entities. Other than that, I don't have a lot I can add to this one.
No questions, queries? Okay, I'm happy to move that the report, GFA general information, including the draft statement of intent 26 to 29 and covering letter be received. Seconder, please. Councillor Wilson. All those in favour? Carried. Finally, the last report this afternoon is the QB report from March to March 2026.
Thank you through the chair. I'll do my best to answer any questions on this one. I'm filling in for Lorraine today on this one. I'll take the paper as read. You can see our capital value, total capital value increased by 15 million since October, and our rating units increased by 17, which suggests we've had a subdivision completed, I would say, but we don't actually grow houses, so the properties. Happy to take questions.
Just noting that it says there, next valuation is August 26. Gosh, that's coming very quick.
Hasn't it just? That's when it starts the
Yeah.
process, and it will be obviously effective for 1 July 27. And this is where you've heard me
Yes.
saying about all the complications that we're going to face for that long-term plan.
Yes.
Not only is it a long-term plan year, it is the first year of not having three waters in our set of accounts and in our activities and our strategies. But on top of that, we're going to have a revaluation, which will muddy the waters a little bit. And of course, we will have to do some rating review as well. So there's going to be so many moving parts when we try to go back to the community to explain the changes.
Yeah, well, I knew that was coming up, hence why I posed the question. But when does it come effect? July 1, new rating valuations?
1 July 2020.
Yeah, which is
7.
effectively a month after we're supposed to have set a rating target in our
Day after.
annual panel, at the same time as we're sitting at the annual
It
panel.
becomes effective. We will have the information much ahead of that to do all our modelling.
Okay.
So by them starting in August this year and we go through all the process,
Mhm.
we will have that information in time for our,
Okay, so we are going to be able to line those two documents
I'm
up. going
doing
forward.
everything in my power to nag and encourage that to happen, and training the team so that we're all across this, because it isn't something that where we just sit there and leave QE to do. We have a lot of impact as the finance and the rating teams to actually verify the information is correct.
It's another ball for you to jump,
Oh, just another one.
Yeah.
Particularly the team. It's a lot of, it's a lot of work.
but it is coming back to our early workshop today. If you talk about emerging risks, I think this one sits right in that space as well.
It just adds another challenge. It doesn't change the bucket of money we collect.
I
It
know.
just changes how we divvy up the money.
That's right.
When we were doing our forecasting and we were pretty hopeful, some pretty amazing growth. I want to say last, maybe my first term on council. Do we have any idea what sort of numbers we thought we might be at now? Like how behind out those projections are we, is what I'm probably asking.
We can get you the numbers, but I don't have them
No.
off the top of my head.
Must be able to see.
We
Yeah.
will, we'll do that, and we'll be looking again at the next LTP to see where the forecast will be. I think what we'll find is what we did anticipate hasn't quite been met in terms of population growth, is what we focused on.
Yeah, I had this vague feeling of 1.5 and we were 0.7 or something weird like that, so we definitely haven't. But then we're not unique across New Zealand on that
No,
either,
yeah.
other than the Selwyn type places that have just.
Yeah, just to be clear on those population projections. So when we did our spatial plan, we did 3 different scenarios. In the top scenario, our aspirational scenario was 1.5. But for our long-term plan, we used the Infometrics data, which that projection was sitting more around the 0.7, 0.8 round.
Again,
We're not going backwards, Chair.
No.
Well, no, we're not.
That's correct.
That's the big
It's-
thing.
Oh, we are?
19 is
Oh.
quite a-
Okay,
That's right, we'll
anyway,
bring you the real stats. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so no further questions or discussion. I'll move that we receive the QB report. Seconded, please. Thank you, councillor Wong. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried, and I'll call the meeting now closed.